They're all yapping on about global warming, burning too many fossil fuels, yet they're bringing things at larger scale that require just absurd amounts of power.
Maybe they have to create the hurricanes to fuel.
To power the windmills, yeah.
One thing that we know that intelligence will do is fake conspiracies. That's the real conspiracy, right? But this is actually true.
Yep.
You seed you poison the well of investigation to make it so that no one, let's say a politician committed some crime, and you've got people all over the internet and they're digging into it. You're like, okay, what do we do to stop this? Because it's going to make us look bad. They intentionally seed believable but misdirection. People start chasing after the misdirection, thinking they found something, and they end up in the middle of nowhere, never uncovering what really happened.
Oh, I think there's something probably worse than Harp. And Harp might have been something
absolutely
because I don't think the government even really operates it now. It's just the University of Fairbanks, right?
I try to tell people that when a lot of people bring up Harp, and I'm like, Harp is like an idea. It's like it's a thought process of a very powerful type of technology, but it's old, and I think it's possible that the whole term is being used as a distraction now to discredit people who talk about it. I do think there is a technology that's bigger than Harp that can do exactly what Harp conspiracy theories are saying that it does, though.
There's also lots of Harps.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's not just Alaska. Exactly. There's a lot of
many Harps. And if you think, if you
a lot of
believe
CERNs.
that I was just going to say, if you believe that they're smashing particles at the speed of light together beneath Geneva, that do create microscopic black holes that other people, like scientists, are worried.
Yeah, but don't touch the weather.
This is also possible. Then,
don't touch the weather ever.
And aren't they building a larger Hadron Collider?
Yes.
I think they're doing black holes now beneath South Dakota at some point.
Yeah. So we have Fermilab, which is a super collider, and that's in Illinois, and it's massive. And then the Large Hadron Collider, which it's Geneva, but it's actually bigger than that. It's this massive ring throughout Central Europe. And they want to build bigger ones so they can get to higher and higher speeds and smash particles into each other, simulating the conditions of the Big Bang, they say.
Yeah. Please stop.
Where's the power generation coming from that? They're all yapping on about global warming, burning too many fossil fuels, yet they're bringing things at larger scale that require just absurd amounts of power.
Maybe they have to create the hurricanes to fuel.
To power the windmills, I get
Well, the crazy conspiracy theory, because this goes way back like 20 years, is that they can produce antimatter using these super colliders.
Yes.
But the amount that they produce is just minuscule. So there's a conspiracy theory that people, and I'm not saying it's true, that the main purpose of the colliders is to mass produce at the greatest scale we can antimatter, containing them in magnetic rings so they don't make contact with matter. Because when antimatter and matter collide, you get a 100% energy release from both particles, which is massive. So the conspiracy theory has long been antimatter weapons would be the most devastating explosive weapon man has yet created. Imagine a nuclear warhead, but it's the size of a hand grenade.
Right.
Yeah.
Or smaller, actually.
Right. I think any of this stuff is possible. I can't say about these hurricanes exactly. I do think that there's people hiding in power who can manipulate stuff. But I also know typhoons, Kublai Khan had to fight against typhoons. I don't think there were people back then. Maybe there were old governments with lots of power hiding underneath the ground, controlling them. But we have Russia building tsunami bombs. These things
well, here's
crazy.
the funny thing about that.
Earthquake bombs.
Tsunami bomb is, we get it. And it's not a conspiracy theory because the mechanism of it is so basic.
Yeah.
We detonate a nuke underwater and it sends a bunch of water.
Yeah.
So the thing is, if someone were to say, we detonate a bomb, superheating an area, creating a depression or something like this, which could, has a 3% chance of creating a large tropical depression, and then maybe a 3% chance of becoming a hurricane, is that so far-fetched?
Chemical nucleation. Nobody's talking about carbon black. That's one of the new chemical seeding projects that they're using on top of some of these hurricanes, carbon black, because you get that heating element in there, and then that heating creates upwelling and higher pressure in itself that changes storm patterns. Everybody's focused on silver iodide or, nanometals, the barium, the strontium, and the sort of thing in the atmosphere. But very, very few people are talking about carbon black seeding.
What is that?
Carbon black as just graphene particles.
How do they do it? Are they delivering it the same way?
Yeah, same exact way, same delivery system.
And stuff or whatever through planes. Interesting. And
but think about the heat absorption on carbon versus a reflective part of like a nanoparticulate of metal that would be reflective, which they use for supposed geoengineering to bounce and block sunlight, but now absorb the heat. And what could you do with that massive amount of heat absorption on a certain area of the storm? Because that's where, it's going to require heat. Because going back to that high pressure blocking system, if you're going to keep a high pressure block there so that hurricane will stay south of it or west of it or wherever, you're going to have to create a high pressure dome that stays there for days and days and days. And how are you going to get that much heat to stay in the same exact area And the skies would almost turn black from all the dust coming out if they were going to use something at that level to be able to continue to create the high blocking system with the heat like that to create the dome.
What if they had an AI that could calculate areas of the ocean that are ripe for tropical depressions, hurricanes, if they but nudge something? Is that
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
100%.
That's kind of where,
What do you think?
where I'm at with that.
Possible. You could form something again, you know, if you're going to nucleate that to get that formation to start and then upwell and grow from there. But once you get it, then you're talking about chaos. Once it grows
Right.
into
Where it goes, it goes.
Where it goes, unless you really the tech is something so far advanced that we don't understand at this point. Then how do you put a blocking high pressure that's so vast for weeks to keep a storm that south?
I wonder if the people creating it care about the chaos yet. You know, they're just like, we'll create it, see what happens, we'll study it.
It's like playing a big game of Risk, and that's kind of what they're doing. It's like billionaires playing a game of Risk. But again, you got to think about, you know, we're basing all this, like cloud seeding, like those terms are so old. They're from the 40s and the 50s.
Yeah.
This is 80 years ago, 70 years ago. Like the advancements we've made in weather, just because it's not seen, but like Tim said, AI, incredible point, because that AI is so far advanced, so much more advanced than we know it is. Like we get this toy on Grok and that stuff. Those are toys. That's not really AI at all. The real AI is what they're using for this type of weather stuff. It's absolutely true.
And
I'm glad you brought that up.
The fascinating thing too is I remember watching these old sci-fi movies where they're trying to find a chemical formula for a cure or something, and they're in a computer, and the computer's like running simulation, and it shows like the chemicals and everything. And that was
Yeah,
sci-fi.
yeah.
AI literally does that now.
Yeah, yeah.
So they collect all of our health data, put 10 million different files from various humans and various ailments into the computer and let the AI run through it. And they don't got to do anything. Basically, the AI brute forces all the data and finds patterns. And then it says, we discovered that every single person who is suffering from pancreatic cancer also had this one weird marker that no one's ever noticed before because it can see patterns we can't recognize. Then doctors are like, wow. Then if you take some random person's medical data, load it into the AI, they're going to be like, in 10 years, you'll have pancreatic cancer because you have the same marker as them. We can treat it right now. That's what AI can do that humans can't see. So if you were to load all of the world's weather data in real time constantly into an AI, it's going to show you basically a map of probabilities where storms may form. Our predictive capabilities are going to go through the roof with AI technology.
So you said something though. What do you get? Farmers Almanac's been doing that for so long, where they predict, you know, weather patterns for years in advance using what? Astronomy?
Nature.
Sometimes they're very wrong. Often
Sometimes very wrong, right? But sometimes they say they're 80% right, but other people
Yeah.
say they're 50% right. But
Well,
it's
here's a-
Solar data too. They use a lot of solar data.
Here's a question. What do you guys think is more complicated to do? Human biology, like understanding human biology start to finish, or understanding weather on a planet? What do you think?
Weather. There's trillions of
You think
variables.
weather's more in depth than like a human biology?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for a couple of reasons too. I think they're both extremely complex.
Yeah.
But with the atmosphere, you're dealing with basically every chemical element and how it could interact in different areas, plus temperature.
Right. Within Earth, of course. I'm not talking about like space or the universe.
No,
as a
right.
whole.
But on the surface of the planet, you've got different temperatures, you've got volcanic eruptions. All of these different things are going to interact in ways that are much more difficult to track, especially from the size of the planet. The data points you would need. I'm looking at it from this. If we took an AI and it was just this basic, like, you know, Jarvis.
That's the
please,
point I'm trying to
input,
keep, yeah.
Input data. If we loaded human medical data, it would probably compile it much more quickly than Earth weather data. Earth weather data, I think, is massively more complicated.
yeah.
Well,
Okay,
kind of.
I can see that. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, kind of look at, they're already using AI for their spaghetti models and all kinds of stuff. But when you think about that, really, if you've seen what happens when you allow an AI to have access to a quantum computer, you're talking about next level computational stuff. So I would agree that with all of the data that we have, they might be able to find the right spot to seed or things like that using AI, and maybe even know where it's going to go. But look how they do the weather now. I mean, they're
Not only that, AI could just be like, if silver iodide is added to this area, the chance of a storm increases to this. It could say if potassium, whatever is a chloride is added to this area, the chance of a storm becomes this. You don't even with like the AI stuff is this is why all of the world's governments are racing full speed towards AI, because it is the most powerful super weapon.
Right.
You don't need to make the weapon. The AI will just tell you.
Shoot.
The AI is just going to tell you, if you heat this one area by 3 degrees in this radius, this will happen. And you're going to be like, okay, you don't need to build a weapon. And then you're going to be like, how do we heat it up? And it's going to say, take these metals and take these things, combine these chemicals, and it'll do it for you.
I think that's what they're doing right now. They're exploiting situation that they've have data for a long time. So if they were going to manipulate the weather, they do know where and what time. I think the problem is they don't have a good understanding of the long cycles of things in order for them to control it the way that people are talking about. Just think about like 536 AD, right? All of a sudden you have empires everywhere. They're expanding, and then something happens, and then followed by several volcanoes, and then everybody's dying. Everybody's starving. It's cold. That could happen like that right now, and they don't even know the trigger. They blame the volcanoes. There might have been some in Ecuador and Greenland and other places, but they don't actually know what the trigger is. And now they're saying maybe there was some kind of cosmogenic, part to that, like the meteoroids adding to it, or possibly the sun did something, and now we're looking at the sun kind of stepping down. And the whole thing with global warming, they're trying to convince you that the planet is going to burn up, and you can look at million years worth of cycles and figure out that we're at the end of a glacial period. So
Interglacial.
the interglacial, yes, excuse me. We're at the end of interglacial, so it's only going to be going into a glacial from here on out for the next 80,000 years. Not that we're going to be here, but